Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Homely and HBI UK. I'm joined here by Michael Crook from HBI, who's going to talk to you about their experience with Homely. So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your business, and then we can dive into a little bit more about your experience with Homely.
Yep. I'm Michael Crook from Heat Pump Installers UK. We're a Huddersfield-based company. We install multiple different manufacturers. We're growing and continuing to grow with heat pumps. So primarily only doing heat pumps for now, but looking at exploring other options as well.
Fantastic. So I guess the first question out is, how did you first hear about Homely? Obviously, you've been really fantastic in installing Homely as and where you can, but where was the first point that you actually heard about us?
Yeah, so I think Andy, our MD, is quite big on LinkedIn. So I think it was Graham Hendra that first mentioned Homely. So it was something that we couldn't resist giving it a try. So we'd heard a lot about it, how it integrates with the system, and how it really works directly with a heat pump as opposed to, say, a third-party thermostat. The Homely talks directly to it. So yeah, so we thought we'd give it a shot, really. Like I say, we do multiple different manufacturers, so we like to try different things. And for us, the Homely just stuck instantly. So.
Oh, brilliant. That's fantastic to hear. And if you were with another installer, for example, and they asked you about Homely, as I said, you've done quite a few installs now, so you've got quite a few under your belt. How would you explain it to them or describe it to them?
Yeah, so I'd say, like I say, Homely isn't like a third-party stat. It's not an on and off trigger. Homely talks directly to the heat pump. So essentially, by setting one up, what we tend to find is it does just take over. So that commissioning process, which is typically a long slog with a very manual setup, the Homely generally does take over that, and it makes installing and the aftercare really good from our point of view. But not only that, is we get to see all our Homely systems all in one portal, which is great. So we can check that. We can see if there is any errors on the system, we get notified straight away. Because obviously we've got it up all the time, and we can also look at people's installations. We can recommend improvements if there are any improvements to be made. But generally, what we say if we was to talk to another installer, is those improvements to be made is pretty much taken over by the Homely anyway. So all of that stuff that you would have had to revisit site for, all of those minor tweaks that you might have had to do, the Homely really is learning that aspect and making the system as efficiently as possible. So yeah, but to an installer, I'd say it's that remote aspect of viewing your systems, as well as the smart part of the Homely, which, like I say, takes over that aspect and makes it really easy for us.
Because you've done quite a few installs and you were just talking about how it's been really helping you with your installs. Can you tell me of like a recent job of where Homely was fitted? Like what type of property was it on? What you were trying to achieve for the customer, and just a little bit more detail about a specific install, for example.
Yeah. So, well, if I take the last one that we installed, for example, it was a Samsung, and the customer wanted the most efficient system as possible. So we've also fit an open energy monitor on that system as well. And he really wants the top of the Scots as such. And that's where the Homely comes in on its own. Like I say, it will run the system as low as possible. The way that I see Homely is it's just drip feeding in the energy that your house is losing at that time. So for that customer, it's perfect for it. Now, it was a smaller house, but less insulated than what you'd expect on a heat pump, less insulated than what you would want. But what we find is the Homely works very well from smaller properties up to medium-sized properties as well, and even those with some levels of poor insulation, because it will learn where that heat is being lost, so it's able to adapt the system. So, like I say, it's really good from that point of view with this specific customer. But like I say, any single zone system, it works extremely well with.
Brilliant. So with that all taken into consideration, what kind of results or improvements have you been seeing from fitting it? I know you mentioned briefly about the remote monitoring and things, but is it more like that there's been a reduced out in call outs, or you've noticed that customers seem to be happier and referring you? Like where's been the biggest bonus for yourself as a business?
Yeah, generally I'd say the customers have been happier across the board. I think where we go to the really large installations, they're not really fit for Homely, but Homely's not really designed for that. But where you've got your normal installation, your single phase heat pump on 1 to 2 zones maximum, the Homely is brilliant in the fact that we do have less callbacks because ultimately the weather compensation is taken over by the Homely. So when we're designing a system, when we're installing a system, we set the weather compensation curve up from what the design is. Now, most installers will know that design compared to the real life isn't always bang on, so what you're setting as your high-end flow temperature might not be what's most efficient for the customer. So it's saving them bills in that respect, which means they're not contacting us saying a heat pump short cycling or so. It's running how a heat pump should be, which is low and slow more continuously. And like I say, any other callbacks, if we do have a callback for whatever reason, we've got that information there and then. So let's say a customer says that something's not running quite right on the system, we can look at that graph data straight away and we can potentially identify the problem before we've even visited site. And it could be a quick phone call to the customer and say, can you quickly check this, for example? A lot of things customers are very capable of doing, which are instant fixes, which saves us from potentially doing a 1 to 2 hour drive out for a 10-minute visit and then a 1 to 2 hour drive back. So from that point of view, the data that we can see is really good for fault finding pre-visit, and the efficiency side is a lot better for the homeowner's savings. So then, hence the reason they're not then ringing us and saying, "Oh, can I adjust this flow temperature?" or "How do I adjust this?" or it's not getting quite up to temperature here. A lot of the time, they would have required extra visits for that extra bit of tweaking, and like I say, the Homely takes over that very well.
So you've seen a drop off in call outs as well, then, just from what you were saying.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I guess just rounding off towards the end of this then is, if Homely was to disappear tomorrow, what's the biggest thing that you'd miss about it?
Definitely a dashboard. I think from me as from us as an installation company, having that dashboard and being able to see all of those systems, it's vital. It's vital for a company in a modern day heat pump company. It's huge for. Now the smaller one-man bands or so that might have more of a closer relationship within half an hour of their installations that they're doing, they're going to find it easier. But as a business grows and you start reaching out, having that information is just vital. So if that Homely Connect was just to disappear tomorrow, then I think we'd be very busy going across to different jobs, potentially with customers that want to know all of this detail. We'd have to go there and find that information out. So the remote monitoring aspect for us is vital. And then if you was to flip it and say what the customer would miss, I think the savings would be a huge huge impact to them, especially where it comes into use with time of use tariffs as well. So
yeah, we've seen a lot of people be taking up the time of use tariff aspect of it. So out of interest, have your customers mentioned to you that they've seen their bills reduced just by using Homely in the time of use?
Yes, yeah. So what we tend to find with the Homely is that if a customer is living in their house and not going away for long periods of time, for example, you've got a normal house, somebody's in the house most of the day. People are moving across to the time of use tariffs, and when they've not got a Homely, they're finding those systems extremely difficult to try and work with the time of use tariff, where you've got more manual scheduling. Whereas customers with the Homely who have got that time of use tariff set up, they are seeing big savings from the system, and it's still running very comfortably for them. So when you've got those peak periods where you're not wanting that heat pump to come on, they're still comfortable during that time. And like I say, that's not what you're getting from a more manual based control system. So yeah, it's a huge thing for the customer, I think.
Brilliant. Okay, and I guess the final question, which is, would you recommend Homely to other installers, and if so, why?
Yes, I would. And again, it's 100% down to that remote monitoring aspect. The Homely gives you a lot more than what a lot of the manufacturing monitoring systems do. So because we install loads of different manufacturers, we've seen what you can see on their web portals. Some of them aren't that easy to use. Some of them don't give you as much data as what you want. Some of them don't give you as much control as what you want. So with the Homely, you get all of that, and it's very easy to use and very easy to read as well. And then likewise, the fact that the customers get an extra savings, why wouldn't an installer install Homely? I just don't understand why they wouldn't if it's compatible.
Yeah, very good question on the end of that. So thank you ever so much for your time, Mike. We'll end it there.